Robert Downey Jr. enters a luxurious restaurant in the heart of the city, dressed in simple, wrinkled clothes, as if he'd just come from an ordinary day. He chooses a discreet table, trying to go unnoticed, while the glow of crystal chandeliers illuminates the space around him. But before he even gets the chance to place his order, a waitress approaches with a look of disdain and an arrogant posture. "Are you sure you can afford to be here?" she snaps, her tone laced with irony, loud enough for other patrons to hear. What happens next not only leaves everyone in the restaurant stunned, but reveals a truth that changes everything. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. we have another special story for you. The Lumiere restaurant was a symbol of sophistication in Beverly Hills. Located on one of the city's most prestigious avenues, its wide windows offered a view of streets illuminated by luxurious neon signs and slow-moving sports cars. Inside, every detail was carefully curated to impress. Lumiere wasn't just a restaurant, it was a destination for those who wanted to be seen and admired. Ashley, one of Lumiere's most experienced waitresses, moved confidently through the dining room, wearing a rehearsed smile. Her immaculate bun and tailored uniform reinforced her image of efficiency and control. Working there wasn't just a job, it was a privilege. At least, that's how Ashley saw it. Being a waitress at one of Beverly Hills' most renowned restaurants was something she mentioned with pride whenever she had the chance. But Ashley had another side, an exaggerated pride that often spilled over into arrogance. She had a peculiar talent for quickly judging patrons, mentally categorizing them based on their clothing, demeanor, and appearance. "Some people just don't belong here," she often thought. The restaurant's glass door swung open smoothly and a man walked in. He wore worn-out jeans, a simple shirt, and a jacket that looked comfortable but lacked any hint of luxury branding. His presence was understated, almost invisible, as he calmly made his way to the reception desk. Robert Downey Jr. wasn't a man who enjoyed flaunting his wealth. Despite being one of Hollywood's most well-known stars, his reserved demeanor stood in stark contrast to the extravagant sparkle of Beverly Hills. And at that moment, he seemed like just another ordinary customer. Ashley was busy at the reception desk, discussing a VIP reservation with another staff member when she noticed Robert. She abruptly stopped talking, her gaze narrowing as she assessed him with barely concealed disdain. He didn't look anything like the typical Lumiere clientele. Without hiding her reaction, she tilted her head and gave him a slow once-over, her eyes lingering on his scuffed boots. "Good evening," she said in a dry tone, forcing a smile that disappeared almost instantly. "How can I help you?" "I'd like a table, please," Robert said, his tone polite and calm. Ashley raised an eyebrow, as if she had just heard something absurd. Her expression seemed to ask, "How dare he?" She crossed her arms, her smile vanishing entirely. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This is a very exclusive restaurant." Robert continued to smile unfazed. "Yes, this is the place," he replied calmly. Ashley let out a short, incredulous laugh, shaking her head. "Okay, just a moment. I need to check something." She turned quickly, not bothering to maintain any semblance of politeness, and headed to the reception office. There, she accessed the reservation system, typing his name with exaggerated flair. When nothing came up, she rolled her eyes and returned to the dining area, visibly annoyed. "Well, as I suspected, you don't have a reservation," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "We do have a few tables available, but just so you know, this isn't a casual dining spot." Robert remained unbothered, his calm demeanor seemingly irritating her even more. "I'd like to dine here," he replied, his tone unchanged. Ashley let out an exaggerated sigh, grabbing a menu with an abrupt motion. "All right, but I'll need to seat you in a suitable area. Follow me." She began walking briskly through the dining room without looking back to see if he was following. When they reached the farthest, least appealing corner of the restaurant, she dropped the menu on the table with an audible thud. "Here you go. This table is perfect for you," she said, in a falsely sweet tone. "If you need anything, let me know. But only if it's necessary, okay?" Robert maintained his slight smile, ignoring her tone. "Thank you. I'm sure this will be an interesting experience." As she walked away, Ashley muttered under her breath, loud enough for a nearby couple to hear. He won't last 5 minutes here. Bet he'll leave as soon as he opens the menu, Ashley muttered to herself. Across the dining room, Robert Downey Jr. calmly opened the menu, his eyes scanning the options without haste. The live music continued to fill the air, but something about his posture was intriguing, as if nothing could disturb his serenity. From the other side of the room, Ashley watched with a smug smile, certain that he would soon ask for the check and disappear. Ashley led Robert through the dining room, with quick mechanical steps, not even bothering to look at him. Instead of choosing a table in the center, where the golden light from the chandeliers highlighted the elegance of the environment, she took him to the most hidden and poorly lit corner of the restaurant. It was a table near the kitchen, where the sound of dishes being washed and the muffled chatter of staff created an atmosphere far removed from the rest of the dining room. "Here you go. This table should do," she said, dropping the menu on the table carelessly. "I think you'll feel comfortable here. It's more private." Robert glanced at the table, then at Ashley, his slight smile unwavering. "Thank you," he replied calmly. She crossed her arms and narrowed her eyes, trying to figure out whether he was being sarcastic or simply clueless. "You're welcome," she replied, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Just so you know, we usually reserve these tables for special cases, but since we don't have anything booked tonight, you can have it." Spinning on her heels, she left before he could respond. When Ashley returned to the table to take his order, her behavior became even more cruel. She pulled out her notepad with an exaggerated motion and cast a cold glance at Robert. "Have you decided what you'd like?" she asked, not bothering to hide the boredom in her voice. "Or would you like a recommendation?" Robert looked at the menu and calmly pointed to one of the most expensive main courses. "I'd like to try this one." Ashley stifled a laugh, covering her mouth with one hand as if trying to hold back a snide comment. "Oh, of course. The filet de Rossini," she said, with a condescending tone. "A classic dish. Just to confirm, sir, you do know this costs $350, right?" Robert nodded, his calm demeanor unchanging. "Yes, it sounds wonderful." She tilted her head, her lips curling into a malicious smile. "All right then, just to make sure there aren't any misunderstandings later, I suggest you double-check the prices. We wouldn't want anyone to have unpleasant surprises." Robert remained unfazed, which seemed to irritate her even more. "I'm certain," he said calmly. Ashley let out a dramatic sigh, as if she were doing him a huge favor, and jotted down the order. "Very well, as you wish. But I'll warn you, our chef prefers dishes like this to be enjoyed by those who truly appreciate fine dining. I hope it meets your expectations." She spun on her heels again, but before leaving, she stopped and turned back. "Oh, and one more thing. The minimum tip expected here is 20%. Keep that in mind while you enjoy." As he waited, Robert seemed entirely unaffected by the discomfort Ashley tried to create. He glanced around the dining room, admiring the decor and the pianist's performance. When the appetizer arrived, Ashley set the plate down forcefully, causing it to slide slightly across the table. "Here's your appetizer. I hope you enjoy it, or at least know what you're eating," she said, with a mocking smile. Robert thanked her politely. "Thank you." Ashley leaned in slightly, as if trying to provoke a reaction. "You know, a lot of customers who order this dish end up not liking it. It's not exactly mainstream, but I think you'll do just fine. Good luck." Robert looked at her with the same calm expression as always. "It looks excellent. Thank you for your attention." Frustrated that she couldn't elicit any negative reaction from him, Ashley walked away quickly, muttering something to a coworker. "That guy won't even make it to the main course. He's going to ask for the check as soon as he sees the bill." Meanwhile, Robert continued to eat his appetizer leisurely. Across the dining room, Ashley watched from a distance, her arms crossed. A malicious smile spread across her face as she noticed that he seemed distracted. "I bet he's going to ask for tap water. These types always do," she commented to another staff member, who visibly ignored her, uncomfortable. However, the elderly customer at a nearby table continued to observe. He raised his wine glass and silently toasted in Robert's direction, who responded with a slight nod and a smile. Dinner was only just beginning, but Ashley's growing disdain wouldn't go unnoticed for much longer. After taking Robert's order, Ashley decided to teach a lesson to the customer she believed had no right to be there. After taking Robert's order, Ashley didn't head straight to the kitchen. Instead, she made a point of prioritizing the patrons she deemed more important. She stopped to chat with an elegant couple in the centre of the dining room, laughed exaggeratedly at a joke told by another guest, and even delivered a cocktail to a table that wasn't hers. Meanwhile, time passed, and Robert continued to wait patiently. In an attempt to provoke him further, Ashley repeatedly walked past his table, pretending to be busy. Every time he glanced in her direction, she averted her eyes and quickened her steps, as if she were too occupied to attend to him. After a long wait, Robert was approached by one of the patrons who had been silently observing Ashley's behaviour, a well-dressed elderly man with neatly combed white hair and a navy blue suit. He walked over with a kind smile. "Good evening, young man. I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I've noticed that you've been overlooked," the man said, his tone polite yet firm. Robert looked up with a calm smile. "Good evening. Don't worry, it's all fine." The elderly man chuckled softly and leaned in, his voice lowering. "You know, sometimes being treated like this is a test of our patience. But I can say with certainty, maintaining your composure is a great sign of strength." Before Robert could reply, Ashley suddenly appeared, her voice cutting through the moment. "Sir, can I help you with something?" she asked, addressing the elderly man with a more polished voice than usual, but still laced with authority. "I wouldn't want you to disturb our customer." The man narrowed his eyes at her, but kept his composure. "Don't worry, miss. I was just greeting this gentleman here. It's rare to find someone so serene." Ashley let out an exaggerated sigh and gestured toward the man's table. "Well, perhaps you should return to your table and enjoy your dinner," she said, clearly impatient. Robert simply observed the interaction, his expression calm yet analytical. "Thank you for coming over," he said to the elderly man with a slight nod. "It was a pleasure speaking with you." The man nodded in return and made his way back to his table, but not before casting one last look of disapproval toward Ashley, who appeared entirely indifferent. When Ashley finally decided to bring Robert's main course, she made sure to take longer than necessary. First, she stopped in the kitchen to chat with the chefs, leaving the dish sitting under the warming lamp. Then, she returned to the dining room to attend another table, completely ignoring the ready plate. When she finally brought the dish out, she placed it on Robert's table with a brusque gesture. "Here's your order. I hope you enjoy it," she said, her tone dripping with irony. "Oh, and if you don't like it, please let us know. We can always adjust to something more affordable." Robert thanked her with the same calm demeanour as before. "It looks excellent." "Thank you," Ashley gave a cynical smile and leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough for only him to hear. "Are you sure? It's a very sophisticated dish. It might be difficult for someone who's not used to it." "I'm sure," Robert replied serenely. "Thank you for your concern." Frustrated that she still couldn't provoke a single negative reaction from him, Ashley walked away quickly. At the bar, she commented to a co-worker who was clearly trying and failing to ignore her. "He's pretending to be polite, but it's obvious he's uncomfortable for," she laughed, placing an empty glass on the counter. "I bet he doesn't even know what he's eating. It's always the same with these types. They come here to feel important, but end up making fools of themselves." Her co-worker forced a smile, visibly uncomfortable. "Maybe he just wants to have dinner, Ashley. Maybe we should treat him like any other customer." She stared at him, incredulous. "Like any other customer? Did you see the boots he's wearing? He doesn't belong here. And frankly, if he can't handle it, he shouldn't have even walked through the door." Meanwhile, the couple who had been observing the scene whispered to each other. "She's awful," the woman said, shaking her head. "He's being so polite, but she keeps trying to humiliate him." "I agree," the man frowned. "It's disgraceful. I think we should say something to the manager." Back at his table, Robert calmly finished his main course. He glanced around, noticing the sympathetic looks from other patrons, but he didn't appear the least bit bothered. When Ashley returned to clear the plate, her expression was still filled with disdain. "So, how was the dish?" she asked with a fake smile. "Did it meet your expectations?" Robert looked her straight in the eyes and replied, "It was excellent, thank you. Please tell the chefs they did an impeccable job." She raised her eyebrows, surprised she couldn't provoke a single complaint or ounce of irritation. As she walked away, she muttered to herself, but just loud enough to be heard, "He might be smiling now, but let's see if he still is when the bill comes." Ashley's voice dripped with sarcasm as she passed the bar, clearly speaking loud enough to be overheard. Meanwhile, Robert remained seated at his table, fingers lightly drumming on the side of his cup. a slight, unreadable smile playing on his lips. His eyes, sharp as ever, scanned the room calmly, suggesting that the moment to act was drawing closer. Ashley, increasingly frustrated by her inability to rattle him, decided to escalate. After serving the espresso he'd requested, she made a pointed comment to a nearby colleague, loudly again. "You know, it's hard to maintain standards when just anyone thinks they can walk in," she said, tossing a glance toward Robert that was as unsubtle as a thrown brick. Her colleague looked mortified, clearly uncomfortable. "Ashley, maybe we should—" "That's why we have a reservation policy," she pressed on. "It helps us avoid situations like this." Around them murmurs rose. Several patrons frowned, others leaned toward each other, whispering. The couple who had been watching all evening looked particularly disturbed. "This is outrageous," the woman said, placing her hand over her chest. "She's trying to humiliate the man in public." Nearby, the elderly gentleman in the navy suit took a measured sip of his wine and muttered under his breath, "This has gone too far." Robert still sat calmly at his table, unfazed. His expression hadn't changed, but something in his posture, maybe a stillness too still, began to make Ashley squirm. It was as if he'd flipped the emotional chessboard over, and she hadn't noticed yet. 2 tables over, a well-dressed woman leaned toward her partner. He must be someone important to stay this composed. Anyone else would have stormed out by now. Or maybe, her companion added thoughtfully, he's just stronger than she realizes. Ashley, still determined to stir a reaction, walked back to Robert's table with an exaggeratedly sweet smile. "I hope you're enjoying your experience," she said, practically spitting the last word through her teeth. "After all, it's always interesting to have different kinds of people here. Really adds a unique touch to the atmosphere." Robert looked up at her. His voice, when it came, was calm, but it had gravity. "Different?" he asked. "Could you explain what you mean by that?" Ashley gave a short, nervous laugh, trying to brush it off. "Oh, don't take it the wrong way. It's just that, well, our clientele typically has a more traditional profile. It's rare to see someone with your style here." And just like that, the room went still. Forks paused mid-air, conversations dropped off. A ripple of tension spread across the restaurant. Ashley basked in it, wrongly assuming she had the upper hand. Robert held her gaze a moment longer. Calm, still. Then, "You're right," he said. "Perhaps I should handle this differently." Ashley blinked, confused. Before she could respond, a voice sliced through the stillness. "Mr. Downey!" The restaurant manager, a tall, sharply dressed man with perfect posture and practiced poise, was suddenly at Robert's side, ignoring Ashley completely. "I had no idea you were dining with us this evening, the manager said, bowing slightly. "Please, forgive any inconvenience. It's truly an honor to have you." Ashley's face went sheet white. Her eyes darted between the manager and Robert, confusion giving way to panic. Robert gave the manager a casual, friendly nod. "Thanks. I'm fine. Just thought I'd have a quiet dinner until things got interesting." Of course, the manager said quickly. "If there's anything—" "There is," Robert interrupted softly. Then, glancing toward Ashley, "I think it's time we talked about how we treat people." The silence that followed was absolute. Every eye in the restaurant was fixed on the scene. The manager's jaw tightened. He turned toward Ashley, his voice cool and precise. "Would you excuse us for a moment? Please wait by the office." Ashley didn't move. She looked frozen until the manager repeated himself, this time with an unmistakable edge. Ashley stumbled back a step, her confidence visibly cracking as she made her way toward the back of the room. Whispers followed her like a trailing shadow. Robert remained seated, composed, sipping the last of his coffee. The manager leaned in slightly, voice low. "Mr. Downey, again, I offer my sincerest apologies. If there's anything we can do to make this right..." Robert gave a polite smile, but his eyes were sharp. "Treat your guests with respect. That's all I ever wanted." The manager nodded firmly. "Understood." And just like that, the balance of power had shifted. Ashley grew visibly uncomfortable and began to stammer, desperately trying to regain some semblance of control. I didn't know. I thought..." The manager cut her off with firm resolve. "Thought what, Ashley? That this customer, who happens to be one of the owners of this restaurant, didn't deserve the same respect as anyone else." His voice was low, but it carried a severity that drained the remaining color from her face. Ashley tried to justify herself. He didn't say who he was, and he looked... She trailed off, realizing that anything she said would only make things worse. That's when Robert finally spoke. His voice was calm, but carried the kind of depth that made everyone in the room fall silent. There's no need to declare who I am, to be treated with dignity. And honestly, it shouldn't matter. Every person who walks through these doors deserves to be welcomed with respect. Gasps whispered across the dining room. The revelation that Robert was one of the owners stunned the patrons. The elderly man at the back gave a knowing nod. Another guest whispered to his wife, "I knew there was something about him. The way he carries himself." The manager turned back to Ashley, his tone collected but stern. "I expect a full explanation after your shift. For now, step away from this table. I'll handle it." Ashley hesitated, then walked off quickly, avoiding the eyes now following her every move. Robert stood, scanning the room, then spoke clearly. This place was built to be a space where anyone could feel welcome, no matter how they dress, where they come from, or how they look. That vision wasn't met today, but this is a moment we can learn from. He turned to the manager. "I'd like to meet with the entire team after closing. There's something we need to address." "Of course, Mr. Robert. And again, I'm truly sorry," the manager replied, humbled. The dining room slowly returned to motion, but a powerful shift had taken place. Something unspoken yet deeply felt by everyone who witnessed it. The restaurant was quiet now, empty, still, and heavy with reflection. Robert stood in the center of the room. The staff gathered around him. His presence was steady, calm, but unmistakably commanding. He looked each person in the eye, then spoke with quiet strength. "We all make mistakes," he began. "What truly matters is what we do afterward." He paused, letting the silence stretch. Today wasn't just about poor service. It was about judgment, about unconscious bias, and the lack of simple empathy. But this isn't a punishment, so it's a chance to grow. His eyes landed gently on Ashley, seated quietly in the back, eyes wet with tears. "Ashley," he said softly but firmly, "what happened today? It was a mistake, and mistakes can be corrected. What you choose to do next, that will define you." She looked up slowly, voice shaking. "I never thought about it that way before," she admitted. "I was so focused on appearances, on the restaurant's image. I forgot what really matters. Every person has value, no matter what they look like. I promise I'll change." Robert gave a small nod, a gentle smile just tugging at his lips. "That promise isn't for me, Ashley. It's for yourself. True change comes from within, and if you ever need help along the way, I'll be here." He turned back to the team. "In this world, it's easy to judge people by what we see, their clothes, their car, where they live. But I ask you this. What happens when you choose kindness instead? When you choose to see the human being, not just the surface?" He stepped forward, hands in his pockets, voice growing softer, more reflective. "Everyone's carrying something you can't see. The person who looks out of place might be having the worst day of their life. The one who doesn't look successful might have achieved more than you know. And the kindness you show to someone who doesn't seem to deserve it, that might be the very thing that changes everything." A heavy silence hung in the room, but this time it wasn't awkward, it was meaningful. Ashley wiped her tears, eyes full of clarity. "Thank you, Mr. Robert. I needed to hear that," she whispered. The manager added, "Your message was clear. We'll do better. We'll make sure Lumiere is exactly what you envisioned." Robert nodded gently, then turned toward the door. Outside, the streets of Beverly Hills sparkled under the city lights. He paused, turning back for one last glance at the restaurant, a soft smile crossing his face. Tonight wasn't just about a mistake in service. It was about the kind of place we choose to create, the kind of people we choose to be. And as Robert walked down the illuminated street, his thoughts lingered not on what had happened, but on the message he hoped would remain. In a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. True strength isn't found in judgment, it's found in acceptance. And in the smallest choices we make each day, we shape not only the world around us, but who we are within it. If this story spoke to you, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore stories of hope, compassion, and quiet resilience.